Sky-high property taxes squeeze egg landowners. I'm Steve White on the Rural Radio Network. Most of that cash flows straight to our schools. Governor Jim Pillen has created a panel to dig into school funding fixes. State Treasurer Tom Briese, himself a row crop farmer, joins us as a member of that commission.
How do we pay for schools and reduce kind of the burden on property taxpayers, and specifically in our rural communities? As you come from Boone County and are an egg producer, you understand that our egg producers, by and large, carry the majority of hold the majority of the land in this state, especially in our rural communities, and finding ways to finance our schools that lessens that burden. That's been the challenge, and now the governor has set up a new committee, and you're a member of that. Is that right?
Yes, it's the School Financing Review Commission. As I said earlier, we continue to have a property tax crisis in Nebraska. The root of that crisis is the state's failure to properly fund K-12 education in Nebraska. As of a couple of years ago, we were essentially last in the country in the percentage of K-12 education derived at the state level, essentially first in the country in the percentage of K-12 education derived from the local property taxpayers. And that's not right. And some of our efforts in the last few years have altered that number somewhat, but the state still relies far too heavily on the local property taxpayers to fund K-12 education. And that is really the cause of the crisis. And so when I was asked to serve on this commission, I jumped at the opportunity. And the goal of the commission is to provide recommendations to the legislature to improve and enhance education funding in Nebraska. And from my perspective, and of course I'm only one member of the commission, cannot speak for the entire commission, but from my perspective, I would like to see us replicate the community college model. There we took community college funding off the backs of the property taxpayers, put it on the state. I would like to see us replicate that model with K-12 education. Not as easy to do with K-12 education as it was with community colleges. I still maintain that it could be done. But at the very least, the state needs to provide more of the funding for K-12 education in Nebraska. I would like to see the state get take on the burden of most of the funding, if not all of it, and take it off of the backs of the local property taxpayers. But to do that, I always say, Steve, the devil's in the details. If the state's going to inject more dollars into K-12 education without taking over entirely, we need to ensure that those additional dollars yield property tax relief. And that was really the goal of the LB 243 revenue cap that I introduced and we passed a few years ago. It ensures, or it goes a long way towards ensuring that additional state dollars put into K-12 education actually reduce property taxes. But that cap may need to be tightened up a little bit to ensure that it works as intended. But yes, in my view, as a member of that committee, we'll talk about a lot of issues. And I can only speak for myself, but I do believe that the state must assume more of the responsibility of funding K-12 education. I'd like to see assumption of 100% of the funding, but that's a tall task. But we'll see how things go there.
I think it's been interesting. We've had a number of school bond issues recently, and by and large they have failed. And the thing I hear from voters, and particularly our egg landowners, is property taxes right now are one of the costliest inputs, essentially, of running a farm operation these days. And we all know what fertilizer prices and seed prices and everything are. So that's pretty telling, isn't it? That given the economic conditions in agriculture, if we could do something to provide some relief on that property tax burden, I'm guessing your friends and neighbors in agriculture would appreciate that, wouldn't they?
Yes, additional property tax relief would be very welcome out in rural Nebraska. I know that. I'm a row crop producer myself, as you indicated, and row crop margins in the current environment, they stink. Most row crop farmers in Nebraska, or many or if not most, are operating in the red in these environments. Commodity prices have fallen in the last few years. Input prices haven't fallen nearly enough. currently input prices are at an historical high relative to commodity prices, and that really has a negative impact on row crop margins, has a negative impact on rural Main Street businesses, has a negative impact on the entire state. Anything we can do to improve margins out in ag country would be helpful, and additional property tax relief for everyone. I'm not talking about farmers and ranchers only. All Nebraskans need property tax relief, but anything we can do to alleviate the burden of property taxes would be welcomed by all Nebraskans.
Again, that is State Treasurer Tom Briese, himself a row crop producer in Boone County, now also a member of the task force set up by Governor Jim Pillen to look into the issue of high property taxes and what steps can be taken specifically to fund schools. I'm Steve White.